moronic, embarrassing shill of a man.
Anyway, that documentary hasn't been made, but the documentary about the Jew has been made. So people are saying, where's my money? Where's the documentary? And then at the same time, his followers seem to be rejecting him because he's only focusing on Islam. So basically, he picked up on this. He picked up on all the drama, and he made these two really kind of effeminate, like little outbursts. These two videos. Yeah, it was very strange. I mean, Ed, I know you've seen those two videos. Do you have any thoughts on them?
Yes, I had quite a few thoughts on them. Some of them I won't say because they involve swearing and things. But I have to say it was embarrassing, really. I mean, I haven't really followed Tommy Robinson that much, but there was a degree to which the impression that I got until I learned about all this was, he's a brave kind of chap who's standing up against these things. And okay, there's not a lot going on upstairs, but he's brave. And there could be no Muslims in England. But if there were people that were not British in England, you would have societal tensions, and you would have a society that was less willing to defend itself and whatever. And he knows that. I think he knows that. But he's kind of, as you say, he has this insecurity about social class, manifestly, left school with no qualifications and whatever, and he's kind of smeared as a bit thick, and he's insecure about it, and so he's dealt with that by, as you say, I think being impressed by what certain political types or whatever have told him to say, and so he behaved. And the evidence, as I say, for that was just the ridiculous emotional response, swearing and it being insulting and rude and nasty, and it was undignified. It reminded me of Wee Jimmy Cranky's response to Jo Swinson losing her seat. So sorry, I mean the Americans might not know that reference, but to Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish First Minister, losing her seat, this undignified, kind of yell, Diane Abbott when she went like, "Get in!" like that, with this undignified, emotional, nasty response. And then I was thinking about some of the things that he said. One of the things that he had a go at Mark and Laura and whoever else was involved about, he said, "Oh, you just sit there behind your computers, pressing Alt Delete, whatever. You don't do anything." Oh, well, no, that's clearly rubbish. I mean, one of the things we know you do is you went out and did that survey. That wasn't sitting behind the computer. I mean, that was going out, talking to people and whatever.
He was also saying that you were all incels, like none of you have children or something, which is also just manifestly
I'll take that up in a minute. I'll take that up in a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's so yeah. This oh, you don't do anything. Well, that's nonsense. Laura and Mark have organised successful conferences, and they've done lots and lots of things. So that's just rubbish. Then the issue of no children. Well, they're my age. They haven't got any children. Go and have some sex. Well, first of all, Mark has a daughter. So that's empirically inaccurate. Secondly, well, they're my age. Well, that's not true either. And Laura's about 6 years younger than Tommy Robinson. So that's inaccurate in that sense. And thirdly, is he not familiar with the concept of group selection, i.e. that you can pass on your genes directly through having children, but you could also elevate your genetic interests indirectly? And some of the kind of genius figures of Western civilization who can be regarded as highly group selected and who have invented things that have allowed Western civilization, or England or whatever, to expand and rule the world. Those people have often not had children. He really made a fool of himself. And then he made a second video that made more of a fool of himself. I mean, it was just a breakdown. Yeah, so I think you've done well, Paul. You've done well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So just to go back to I mean, even if we strip it right back down to basic levels, with him saying that Islam is the only problem, it isn't Muslims that are stabbing people in London. It isn't Muslims that are doing the acid attacks. African Caribbeans are overrepresented by 280%. I mean, in prisons, Black people are 12% of the population in prison, but only 3% of the overall population. And I think it's just like this comfort blanket that he has where he says, Islam isn't a race, therefore I'm not a racist. Whereas the other ones, like me and Mark, we're talking about race. And Richard, I know in America, it's not Muslims that are causing all the problems, is it? It's various other.
Yeah, they're a tiny percentage of the population still. I mean, they're highly concentrated in some areas, particularly in the Midwest, believe it or not. But no, I mean, they're much bigger issues. Let me roll on this. I might get a little nasty myself because I truly do despise Tommy Robinson. I'm not sure I would say that a few years ago, but I think he has shown his hand now, and I don't think there are really any redeemable features to Tommy Robinson. And as I was mentioning, but before we turn the recorder on, I do think that class does reveal something about him in the sense that I think we all talk about this of the lower classes. They're more down to earth. They speak bluntly, and they get it on a visceral level, maybe not on an intellectual level, but they get it in their guts, and that's maybe more important than your head. But I think with Tommy Robinson, there's something else going on. I think there is a class anxiety where he both wants to be an authentic, Cockney, even though he's not, but then also is told by, say, the smart set, or told, to be blunt, by Zionist Jews, that this is how you do it. This is how people will respect you and not think of you as just a racist, is to be a fervent Zionist, to visit Israel, to do some documentary on the poor suffering of this Jewish man, which reminds me of American Christian Zionists who, do all these documentaries on suffering Jews and donate all their money to them, as opposed to people, right here in the United States who are suffering. I think that's a real big part of it. And I think also I agree with basically everything Ed just said, but I would take this a step further and look at it on a political level. The anti-jihad movement is not new. And I think that probably each of us has been influenced to a certain degree by it. Maybe we resonate with it to a certain degree. But I do think that on the whole, the anti-jihad movement is toxic. It arose in the early 2000s, and that wasn't a coincidence. It arose post 9/11, which is understandable, but it arose in the context of the United States and Britain supporting a war in Iraq that was based on lies and has done nothing for our people, and has basically served the interest of Israel, served the interest of some neoconservatives in Washington, served the interest of maybe some oil companies who benefited, but certainly didn't serve our interest at all. And this anti-jihad movement gave this aura to these terrible wars, that you are a crusader and you're fighting this whole, battle of civilizations that will win on behalf of enlightened Christianity or whatever. And I think that kind of thing, it becomes powerful because it's kind of sub-racial. It's subconsciously racial. We get it that the Muslims are not us and that we're fighting against them. But I think it's sub-racial in a very toxic manner. It leads white people to support bad foreign policy causes. It can be channeled in the direction of unconditional support of Zionism, where, Israel's the front line of our civilizational battle, and Israel is a European country, and they're just like us, doing the good work by occupying the Palestinians and all this stuff. I think it's toxic in that way, and I think it's also kind of intellectually bankrupt in many of the ways that Ed described. Whenever I hear these anti-jihadi people talk about Islam, it almost makes me want to convert. They basically describe Christianity as liberalism, which I guess from my perspective it is the foundation of that. And they describe Islam as this badass, globe-trotting, ass-kicking warrior cult. And when I listen to these people who are generally just Tommy Robinson types, or Sergei Trifkovich Christians or whatever, I'm just kind of like, where do I sign up for this Aryan warrior cult?
Yes, I remember you were very impressed by Nation of Islam, weren't you, when we went there?
Yes, we visited those people and found we had so much in common. Yeah, the West. If what you're defending on the West is like the non-aggression principle or individualism or something, then I don't know. Like, that's not the West. That's a West that deserves to die, in my opinion. That's a weak West. That's a it's like, these are our Western values: individualism and democracy and feminism and consumer capitalism. I mean, at some level, that kind of, you're defending nihilism at the end of the day. And in vis-a-vis Western nihilism, Islam is the strong horse. So I think the anti-jihad movement is terrible. I think it's also played out. I think Tommy Robinson's rhetoric just reeks of the first decade of the 2000s, the George W. Bush era. I think it's played out. It's an absolute red herring. We should just dump it.
I'd like to add it's very, very intellectually simplistic for him to just blame everything on Islam as if Islam's inherently bad. As if he calls it whatever he's appalling. As you know, I've written this book about Islam, which I look at the intelligence. I said just look at the intelligence aspect, but the more I delved into it, researching the book, the more positive I kind of became about. I mean, Islam. It's very, very simplistic the way he treats Islam. I know that might sound a bit left wing to say. It is very simplistic, and in terms of promoting ethnocentrism and groups that win the battle of group selection and whose genes survive. As with all religions, but at the moment it's the main one doing it. It has a lot to say that's positive. So Islam is right about many things, as it were. So yeah, I was most unimpressed by what he had to say. Anyway, that's all I think.
So Tommy knows that Islam is connected to ethnicity anyway, because when he sent me some figures over for Muslims, he actually just sent me figures over for Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. So he knows that it's connected to those ethnic groups anyway. So he's kidding himself. But a lot of people in Britain do come over to real nationalism by going through the counter-jihad gateway, myself included. So if we got rid of it, like, would less people reach nationalism, do you think? Or would you say it does more harm than good?
That is a good point. I look, keep in mind, I'm Richard Spencer. I'm always kind of vanguardish and, out there and so on. So from my perspective, I think the anti-jihad movement at this point is doing more harm than good. However, I actually recognize your point about it being a kind of gateway, but there's the difference between a gatekeepers and a gateway. If a gateway leads you into a wider world, if you're unconscious, as a 20-year-old, and that something's going wrong, but you can't articulate it, and the anti-jihad movement kind of leads you to a deeper understanding, I think it served a very good purpose. But if it leads you into joining the English Defense League, I don't know if that exists anymore, or supporting Zionism or whatever, it's obviously been a gateway. It's taking your good instincts and perverting them. So I think it's a real question. And a serious question that's worthy of being discussed, but I would come down on the side that it does more harm than good.
Yeah, so the issue isn't that he's sat at the gateway saying, look, guys, these are my views. Now you need to go on to these people after me. The issue is that he stood there saying, these are my views. Them little white supremacists, don't listen to them. Stay here, stay in my little camp. And I agree with you that it's doing more harm than good, although it can be a vehicle for some people.
Anybody with half an ounce of intelligence would be able to see through those videos, though. But it was so obviously a kind of a fear reaction, and it was just. I hope they get widely watched. That's all I can say.